Good morning. My name is Stuart Richner, CEO of Richner Communications, a publisher of Herald Community Newspapers. Welcome to this week's installment of Herald Inside LI, a weekly webinar series produced by Richner Live that brings together leaders from the business, government, and nonprofit sectors to address your most important issues and to answer your unfiltered questions. Today, we will be discussing the economic development outlook of Long Island and are excited to be joined by many of the most influential players in the development world of Long Island and beyond. Thank you to our panelists, Harry Coghlan, John Madigan, Michael Maturo, Tom Pistore, who will be hopefully joining us shortly, Sophia Perna-Plank, and Kyle Strober for joining us this morning. Thank you also to our sponsors today, RXR, Citi Commercial Bank, and Jaspan Schlesinger for supporting Herald Inside LI and our Long Island communities. Over the next 45 minutes, our Herald Inside LI host, Skye Ostreicher, will lead a discussion about all of the exciting projects underway and on the horizon for Long Island, as well as how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the island's economic outlook. I know that we are all looking forward to hearing the latest updates on the many projects and programs that make Long Island a great place to live, work, and play. Before I turn it over to Skye, I want to remind the audience that at any time, you can submit a question to Skye and our panelists by using the Zoom Q&A button on your screen. We will try to answer as many of your questions as time allows. Last but not least, we want to know what topics you would like to see future Herald Inside LI webinars cover. What are the issues that are most important to you and your family? Please email us at insideli@liherald.com with your thoughts and suggestions. I'll now hand it over to Skye to kick off our discussion. Skye?
Thanks, Stuart, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Herald Inside LI. I'm your host, Skye. I'm really excited for today's discussion about commercial real estate and economic development on Long Island at a time when we are just a few days away from a presidential election that may leave us unsure of the outcome for many weeks. In the middle of a global pandemic that has further divided our country and decimated New York City, a place many families have fled, seeking refuge in the suburbs, hunkered down in their homes that are not just their homes anymore, but now function as full-time offices, schools, gyms, restaurants, and recreation centers, with parents working from home and kids learning virtually. Does this all sound frightening or futuristic? I'm not sure. But I'm here with a panel of guests today that can provide insight into the industry when it comes to what this means when we think of growth on Long Island. Today, we turn to these experts. I have just an hour to pick their brains to discuss our region, how plans for Nassau's largest projects, the UBS Arena at Belmont Park and the Nassau Hub, are adapting because of COVID, how, with people predominantly working from home and not commuting in and out of New York City, will cool downtowns be cool anymore? How about malls? Will mall space, instead of retail shops, become online fulfillment centers for stores like Amazon? Taking these things and more into consideration, how do we recover from the devastating health and economic impacts of the pandemic? And how do people afford to live on Long Island where the cost of living is ever increasing? I'm here today as host and moderator of this discussion, and we've done several of these webinars so far on Herald Inside LI, covering topics such as K-12 education and what that looks like in our new normal, life on some of Long Island's college campuses, the residential real estate market. And last week, we heard from some of Nassau County's elected officials about their outlook from a government perspective. Where do we go from here? If you've seen other episodes of Herald Inside LI, you'll know I like to keep these discussions conversational. So I invite you, our panelists, to please bounce ideas off of each other. We have an exciting group of local celebrities here, and all of us want to hear from you. Our speakers today include Harry Coghlan, CEO of the Nassau County Industrial Development Agency, John Madigan, Senior Vice President and Director of Emerging Corporates for Long Island Citi Commercial Bank. Michael Maturo, President, RXR Realty. Sophia Perna-Plank at Jaspan Schlesinger, who focuses on commercial litigation and bankruptcy matters. And Tom Pistore, President of Commercial Operations for the brand new UBS Arena at Belmont Park. And Kyle Strober, Executive Director of Association for a Better Long Island. Welcome all. It's great to see you. And before we begin, let's all smile and wave at the camera so I can take a screenshot, and this will go in print in the Herald community newspapers. Thank you. So let's get into it. And I'd like to kick it off with Mike Maturo. RXR is a leading real estate owner, investor, operator, and developer with properties across the metropolitan area. I want to know, how has RXR changed their thinking about the suburbs and Long Island in particular, given the pandemic and the overall climate? How has your vision changed from 6 months ago?
Terrific. Good morning, everybody. That's a pretty loaded question. I probably need a good hour and a half to answer it, but I think it's probably good to start with what things look like and how Long Island and New York City were operating right prior to the pandemic, to really get an understanding of how things have changed and what things may look like coming out of the other side. So from our standpoint, New York City was doing extraordinarily well. Economic activity was at a high point. There was good employment, good economic activity. Leasing was very strong. Employment was the highest it had been. So things in the city were going along very well. In fact, I think a number of people may have thought things were getting a little bit too frothy, and that could create its own consequences. But if you look at Long Island, I think what Long Island started to do is realize that it needed to change its perspective in terms of attracting talent, right? And talent, the talent grab was really the big issue, I think, prior to the pandemic. And what we had seen a number of years ago is that while New York City was doing well, it was just struggling with affordability on the residential side and even on the commercial side. And on the other side of the equation, Long Island and the surrounding suburbs and other suburbs surrounding Manhattan realized that they were in a fight for talent, and they needed to change how their landscape looked and how they approach to attract talent. And that's, I think, was the impetus to start to see developments of downtowns. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we kind of looked at that intersection and started to think how we could play into that. We formed a fund, what we called a emerging submarket fund. And it was basically geared towards investing in underinvested downtowns around the region to try to replicate that live, work, play environment. And I think a lot of people on Long Island and in the surrounding suburbs started to think that, listen, we need more of that type of downtown mixed-use development so that we can keep the talent, keep our young people here, and more companies to come here to attract that similar talent. So we invested in places like Glen Cove and New Rochelle and downtown Stamford and downtown Yonkers. We started to get involved even in Hempstead, and then you mentioned our hub project, which is a little bit longer, but the concept there was to build a mixed-use village type of project surrounding the Coliseum. And for 5 years, we invested in these downtowns, mostly on the residential side, and have done very well with them. And you've seen places like Mineola, Farmingdale, Patchogue, in New Jersey, obviously Hoboken, Jersey City, those places, doing the same thing. So I think prior to the pandemic, you started to see this change, this evolution of suburban downtowns try to replicate that urban density, creating that live, work, play environment, but offering people the benefits of the suburbs, meaning being closer to the beaches, being closer to the parks, having more space. And I think that was a phenomenon that was growing. So now the pandemic comes and obviously turns things somewhat upside down. You saw an exodus from the city. Today, we're still only seeing 10 to 12% occupancy in our office buildings. We have about a 20 million square foot portfolio of Class A trophy assets in New York City, another 5 million here on Long Island and in other suburbs. And what we've seen is actually the suburbs being kind of a net benefiter of what's going on here. So you've seen this movement of people back into the suburbs, and I think it's more an acceleration of what's normal. Young people, as they get married, have kids, get cramped in an apartment, they look to the suburbs for the schools, for more space, and that has always been the case. But I think what's happened now is probably taken 5 to 7 years of that activity and concentrated it, and you see this movement into the suburbs, not only on Long Island, but we're seeing it in Westchester, we're seeing it in Connecticut, and we're seeing it in New Jersey. And that's been good from the housing standpoint. Obviously, if we see prices and bidding wars for homes here on Long Island, seeing the same thing in Westchester. That's also benefited rental properties. As we've seen rental traffic for rental properties increase. We're doing really well on our, we have about 5 to 7 projects in the suburbs that are leasing very well. And we're seeing a combination of people coming from the city, both Manhattan. We're seeing people that are coming from Queens and Brooklyn into the projects. And the other thing we're seeing is empty nesters that are taking advantage of a hot real estate market to sell their homes. And we're seeing people moving into rentals and even our condo projects in North Hills and in Glen Cove, increased traffic. So that's been a net benefit. On the commercial side, on the commercial office side, we've also kind of seen a net benefit. Not that there's a mass exodus of large employers coming out to the suburbs, but not yet at least, but we are starting to see smaller to medium-sized businesses that had a presence in the city now saying, rethinking whether they need that, coming back to Long Island and Westchester and saying, I'll expand a little bit more and consolidate in my suburban office. So we've seen a good activity on the leasing side in our commercial office buildings here on Long Island. So as I said, I think there's a net benefit on the housing side. There's a net benefit on the commercial side. And so the question is, okay, what's next? Right now, there's a bit of a fog, I like to say. People are really struggling to make a decision in terms of what their footprint is going to be on the commercial real estate side post-COVID. We've gone and we've had this great experiment called the work from home. And it's worked for the most part. I think it's good for getting tasks done. I think we've all found we kind of can work from home in somewhat of an efficient manner. The question I think we're all going to be struggling with is can you grow a business? Can you create a business? Can you create culture in an organization? Can you build morale? Can you mentor? Can you lead? Can you foster that type of energy just via Zoom? And I would suggest you can't. And I think that as we come out of the pandemic and we reinvent how we're going to office and even how we're going to live our lives, I think certainly there will be an adjustment, and mobile work and work from home will become part of the equation. But I still think that you need to be together to collaborate. innovate, ideate, and take a team, build a culture, build a morale, mentorship, or all those things you're going to need to collaborate. Now, what the office will look like and how people use that office in the future to do all of those things, that needs to be reinvented. And even prior to the pandemic, you started to see those things happening already. You started to see concepts of greater collaboration, higher level of amenities, higher level of services to allow people to work better, more efficient, more collaboratively. And I think that's going to accelerate on the other side. So I think you'll see a redistribution of how people work, but I still think people are going to need to come together to innovate, to create ideas, to create new businesses, and to grow those businesses, and to take young people and teach them and let them accelerate through those processes. So it's interesting. And like I said, I think we're kind of in this fog right now, and we may be in that fog till maybe the end of the year, hopefully first quarter, second quarter, as the therapeutics get more online, hopefully maybe a vaccine, and things start to come together, people get back to work. But I think the suburbs are going to benefit. Again, I think they'll come out of this better. I think there'll be a more equal distribution of the population in the area. So that's kind of my lead into kind of what I'm seeing.
You touched on a lot of different points there. So there's a lot that I want to dive into, but really, I think a big takeaway of what you said is this was all pretty much on the way to happening, to making the suburbs a better, cooler place for people to live. And maybe we shouldn't rely on the city so much. Maybe we don't need to. But in terms of those commercial spaces that you talked about, I want to talk about now the leasing and lending environment and how these interest rates are low, and what are some of the things that commercial landlords are doing during this time to be creative and to make the best of their space. And I'll ask John about that.
Sure. It's funny because, at Michael's point, we are seeing, from our perspective in the portfolio, a lot of clients, of our existing clients, especially in Brooklyn, Queens, they're looking to move their manufacturing facilities or wholesale facilities, distribution centers out to Long Island. So a lot of the commercial real estate requests we're getting right now are, again, companies looking to move out here, which to Michael said, but I mean, the suburbs are a net benefit. And the second point is, the talent is staying home and not really they don't want to go in the city anymore. So the talent is here as well. So a lot of our clients are seeing that. And a lot of our clients, they live in Long Island and they work in the city or they have their plants in the city. So we're seeing a lot of that as far as, on the commercial real estate side. As far as the landlords go, I mean, we don't really deal a lot in investor real estate in our portfolio. We are seeing, some downturns in that, especially in New York City on the New York side and our investment grade portfolios. Some of the smaller banks, will get hurt with that, obviously. And depending on if there's a second wave or a vaccine, we hope so. We hope a vaccine will be depending on how these banks fare through that. The major banks are really well capitalized to get through this. A lot to do with the 2008 crisis with the stress tests and the capitalization requirements. So there's no worry there as far as if we have a second wave, if the bank's going to get through that. If we're going to have another 2008 bailout of the banks, that's not going to happen. But smaller banks, mid-range banks that rely heavily on these investment grade portfolios, they could have some issues going forward, especially with the office space landscape in New York City. And like Michael said, though, Long Island is definitely benefiting. We are seeing that from our portfolio side.
Right. And so you work in that space also, talking with these different commercial landlords and how they're going to be creative with their space and looking forward in the retail market also with these storefronts. So what are you seeing now?
Sure, and I apologize for the light going off. It's one of those sensors that I guess I wasn't moving enough and the light shut off. And I hope it doesn't happen again. In any event, so on the legal side and the landlords that I represent, Unfortunately, they're involved with a lot of these large retailer bankruptcies. So, I have clients that are involved in Pier 1, Ascena Retail, Tailored Brands, all over the country. And our landlords are suffering in the sense where they're left with these spaces because a lot of times these stores they're not going to operate in locations that aren't profitable. So now we're left with these empty storefronts, and there's no one to really lease to, especially these big box stores. So our landlords have to get creative in the sense they have to start breaking up these large leasable areas. So, if they have a store that's 5,000 square feet, they're going to have to do some work and, chop those up so that they can start filling those spaces. They're talking to their tenants because really right now is teamwork across the board. Our landlords don't want to end up in a situation where they have an empty storefront. So they'll work with their tenants talking about, rent deferral, rent abatement. Some of the things that we're seeing are percentage rent on leases, trying to negotiate using numbers from, 2019 rather than focusing on years before and looking at, how much they're making and how much a landlord is going to get on top of their base rent. And also getting creative and just going back to some of the other things that were talked about, especially with these fulfillment distribution centers. Malls, for example, they have empty stores. Now, why not try to fill those stores with non-retail related businesses like doctor's offices? Throwing those into a mall, you're now creating more foot traffic. So my landlord is going to collect rent. Another business is going to start being profitable, and it's going to get the economy going. Now, putting health, issues aside, that's not my expertise, so I'm not going to, talk about that. But, that's something to really think about. Putting, fulfillment centers and warehouse distribution centers in these malls, they're already in the middle of huge, towns where there's a lot of business, like Smith Haven Mall, for example, in Lake Grove or Roosevelt Field, where, my office is located. You already have a bunch of, people going to shop. So businesses are going to be able to get their products and their merchandise out to consumers a lot faster if, they just have the space in the mall used to fulfill orders and to ship those out. So those are just some of the things that we're seeing. And unfortunately, the landlords that are involved in bankruptcies, a lot of times people don't realize that the landlords also suffer during all of this. It's not just the tenants. So my clients, they still have to pay if they have a mortgage on their property and taxes and things like that. So whether they're going to have to refinance, take out another mortgage, at the end of the day, there's still a face that's being affected. And I think a lot of times that gets lost in translation, especially in the bankruptcy cases that, I'm handling.
Now, talking about the foot traffic that you mentioned and the concentration of people, I want to turn now to Tom Pistore, who is with UBS Arena at Belmont Park, putting up a major arena on the Nassau-Queens border. And with people of the mindset of working from home and not leaving their houses and maybe shopping more online, the question here is, what's the outlook from your perspective on building this major arena when it's hard for some people to envision the next time they'll be able to go to a concert or a sport?
Yeah, this is really the courage and project of Tim Lewicki, the CEO of OVG, and Scott Malkin, the owner of the Islanders, and also the partner in the arena build, along with John Ledecky, Art McCarthy and the Wong family, and Dewey Shea. And imagine building this 17,200, 19,000 bricks and mortar wonderful arena in the midst of a pandemic. So the thoughtfulness and the courage that they have to obviously continue the project. We are slated right now for 21-22. Probably seems, based on what most of the leagues are suggesting, it would be, late Q4 of 21. So, echoing comments made by John and Michael around vaccines and therapeutics, at that moment in time, we certainly hope that the confidence of the fans in the Long Island community, to return to play or return to some normalcy by that point is in place. But we're not taking anything for granted. We're focusing the build, around our 3 S's, as we say. Sanitization is at the forefront. We always, focus on security, which is always there. And then from a sustainability perspective, that's something as a legacy marker for the venue, that we continue to focus on. So around all those points, we're effectively trying to be a beacon in the community. There's a lot of darkness right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of anxiety, and the construction continues. We are on track. We're making great strides with our Islander fans. We're making great strides with our premium fans, with our music lineup that's about to be announced, having wonderful partners like UBS, which was obviously announced as our naming partner, and Northwell, a couple weeks ago. We're partnering with some of the world's best brands to help us through this. So from an economic development perspective, the 10,000 construction jobs, the 3,000 permanent jobs, the 1.5+ billion in private infrastructure, building the first, railway in about 50 years at the Belmont station, and then doing all of this now in, as Mike and John kind of alluded to, people moving to Long Island, that is certainly a wonderful narrative and storyline that we're hearing from our fans and from our customers and from our various partners.
So it sounds like a happy story. And speaking of this economic upturn that the arena can provide, Harry working with the Nassau IDA. IDAs have enormous economic power as well, and they offer the means to strengthen the regional economy. And Harry, maybe you can walk us through how IDAs work and how they also contribute to economic activity and giving back to the community.
Thank you, Sky. Good morning, everyone. Just very quickly, I just do want to recognize Stuart Richner and everybody at the Herald. You provide an important service to our communities, and we look to the Herald for their voice and the voices that they give the communities when we're looking at the benefits of projects, and also when we want to communicate like we're doing today, what the IDA is and what we offered. The IDA is not unique to Nassau County. We actually formed under New York state law, not county law, and we are one of 109 all across New York State, and actually one of 8 on Long Island. What we do is we address something that is critical when John and his team are looking at lending opportunities. Should they lend to a project? And we address what Michael brought up very early in his remarks, which is affordability. We have to address the fact that Long Island as a region in general is a high cost region. So when we're trying to sell to companies to move here or expand here, you're extolling all of the other virtues that have already been mentioned. Our vibrant downtowns, quality of life with our beaches, our parks, our entertainment, which is only increasing now with the exciting developments for the UBS Arena and the Hub. But there are other things you can point to that offset the affordability aspect. You look at U.S. News and World Report recently named Nassau County the safest community in the country. And kudos to our county executive, to Commissioner Patrick Ryder, and all the men and women on the Nassau County PD for keeping all of us safe. Because when you're looking to move, it's not just COVID that's bringing our people out here, but it's the benefit of being here. They're selecting Nassau County and Long Island to migrate to. And they're doing so because it's safe, because it's clean, because there are resources available, there's a great quality of life, and there are exciting things happening here. But we address the affordability component of this. There is a lot of discussion around pilot programs and the things we do. I'll tell you what the idea is not. We're not giving tax breaks. I mean, we're not giving corporate welfare. We're not writing checks. We're not giving out cash. We're not destroying the tax base of Long Island, as sometimes reported. And it's frustrating to me sometimes when we work hard on a great project and you see some reporting and the headline just reads tax breaks. And that's what people see, and that's what resonates. When I look at it from a standpoint of tax creation, we never go backwards. We never take our communities backward from a revenue source. We only seek to build upon it. Myself, my team, We're all residents of Nassau County. My daughter's in the public school system here in Nassau County. Trust me when I tell you, we're not going to do anything that is going to destroy the tax base of Nassau County. We're only seeking to grow it, which will offset the burden on our residents as we're working with these manufacturing companies, these wholesale companies that were referenced earlier to move here. So we have 3 incentives that we can offer that are provided for under New York state law. And we have what I would say is a limited toolbox, but it's a highly regulated toolbox. There's only so much we can do. We can provide savings on mortgage recording taxes and saving sales and use taxes. So if a developer is considering making a substantial capital investment in Nassau County, we can work with them to eliminate the sales tax on the goods that they're purchasing, construction materials and the like. And that's a cost savings. The other thing that is very important is the cost certainty and the stability. And when someone like John is looking at a developer's P&L and maybe they're trying to finance 80% of a development, he's looking at their pro forma P&L for the development over the next 5, 10, 15 years. They're measuring the return on the investment. And I don't want to speak for John, but lending institutions are looking for stability in the assumptions. And what we provide is simply a phase-in of the increased value of taxes based upon that investment. It's no different. My wife and I invested recently in our home. We added a bedroom and a bathroom. That's going to increase the value of my property. And we applied for the capital phase-in. And it phases over 5 years, the increase in the taxes. It's no different from what we're doing here. Pilot programs, payments in lieu of taxes, are the mechanism in which we do that. And everybody focuses on the in lieu of taxes portion of that. What they don't focus on is that payments. Payments are being made, and they're being made just like property taxes. It's just a different mechanism, and it's being allocated a portion back out to the taxing jurisdictions in the same manner in which it was previously as a tax. What's attractive to the companies we work with is just giving them a certain schedule of what their property taxes vis-a-vis a pilot will look like over a number of years. And we are removing the variability out of that line of their investment return analysis. And that's the most critical thing that we provide, is trying to address the affordability issue and how can we make it more affordable for developers, companies to move here like the manufacturers, but also developers of housing. It's critical that we continue to develop affordable housing. And we work closely with our housing partners to make sure they're incorporating affordable elements, because we have to be able to address everybody throughout all of their stages of life, whether they're the millennials embarking on their first step out of the house, or we're seniors who are now empty nesters. You want to downsize, but you don't want to leave Nassau County. And that's what a lot of these developments are providing today. So what we do is we work with our developer partners to just make it more certain on what that investment will look like.
Thank you. And you mentioned local government and the function of the state and the local government, and Kyle from Association for a Better Long Island. I know that you've written some op-eds recently on IDAs and on economic activity, and what's your perspective now for where we go from here?
Thanks, Guy. First off, I want to thank the Herald. I grew up in Merrick, and as a Merockian, I grew up on the Herald newspapers. So Scott Britton, if you're listening to this, I know you are a fellow Merockian as well, and I continue to enjoy reading your articles over at the Herald. Secondly, I want to say that Michael was spot on his narrative to open up this segment. I sometimes think he might have been following my life for the last 10 years, because as someone who's of the younger population here, we're looking for places that have cool downtowns, mixed use, walkable downtowns. When I moved back from college, I moved into the city, and then when I got a job in Long Island, I was looking for a place that I can park my car on Friday and not have to move it until going back to work on Monday. And at the time, there was only options between Rockville Center, Long Beach, and Huntington. And as Michael said, I chose the proximity to the beach. So I chose Long Beach. But then now I'm getting, a little older in life, and I have a 2.5-year-old, and me and my wife are looking for a house, and the market right now is sky high. If you want to purchase a home you're looking at paying over asking price. You're probably in a bidding war, and you're going to have a lot of heartaches and headaches before you finally find the place that you're looking for. And lastly, I want to also touch upon another thing that Michael brought up, is coming back to the workplace. I think from what we're seeing in our commercial property owners is that it's coming back into the office really based on age, your demographics in your company. Law firms who have people over the age of 60, I mean, they can do their work and be effective from home. People who are younger, like myself, we really enjoy the work environment, the camaraderie, the sharing of ideas, but also the competition of being amongst your peers and seeing what they're doing and motivating you to work harder. So I do think that a lot of the returning to work is going to happen quickly for the companies that are younger in age. But eventually we're all going to want to go back because people like being in the environment, in the workplace environment. There's a lot of distractions at home. People like my age have children. It's not always easy to be on a webinar right now if your child is crying in the background. So people do want to get out of the house. They want to go back. And I do think that eventually there will be a remedy to COVID and the workplace will return. People will go back and commercial office space will be filled.
Kyle, what do you see as the government's role in assisting in the post-pandemic economic recovery?
So we just went through several phases of COVID relief. What we're seeing is it kind of was like a sugar high. The federal government shot the economy in the arm, and slowly we're going to be weaning off that high, and we're going to need another shot before we go into winter. A lot of this is going to be for unemployment assistance. It's going to be more PPP funding to keep some of these businesses hopefully afloat during the winter months, particularly those in the retail and the restaurant business. Certainly, there will be a purge of some of the weaker businesses that were struggling pre-COVID, but we're going to need to see state and local funding. When it comes to real estate, the price per square foot for taxes is extremely high here on Long Island, particularly in Nassau County. And when states and counties and townships have billion-dollar shortfalls, well, that price per square foot for taxes on space is going to be astronomically high unless these budgets are plugged with federal funding. In addition to that, hopefully we can see something like SALT. Hopefully we can see a business liability waiver. Something like that would give business owners a little bit of a sense of comfort on bringing people back and bringing people into restaurants and retail spaces, because it's almost impossible to stop the spread of the virus. I mean, you can follow CDC standards as much as possible, but it's almost impossible to stop the spread. And if there's not a waiver out there, businesses, particularly in retail and service industry, are going to question whether they want to bring people back into their space.
Right. And thinking about that, I mean, people are concerned, and a lot of Long Islanders question about congestion and bringing more traffic to the suburbs. You mentioned the high price of residential real estate, and it's true, there are bidding wars on houses in the suburbs as people move into the suburbs, into homes. And what do you say to anyone who questions bringing traffic to Nassau County, who want to keep the suburbs and keep the city people in the city? And Michael, I'm sure you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you think back to, again, pre-COVID, what was Long Island doing? What was the MTA doing? What was the LIR doing? They were expanding our infrastructure for public transportation. And the answer is that's great, right? Because it's the third track is being completed. East Side Access is being completed. The answer is we have to get back to the mass transit. We have to get back to public transit. We can't be afraid of that. Now, right now, unfortunately, people aren't staying away from that. What's interesting, just a couple of stats, the LIRR is down to, it was down to 4% usage at its low point. It's up to about 28% usage on a daily basis. And on weekends, it's up to 55 or 60% of what it was, which is an interesting statistic in contrast. And what I think it tells you is that people are less afraid to get on to the train to go into the city on the weekends, as opposed to their employers that are restricting people from going back to their offices. So I think people are getting more comfortable riding at least the commuter trains, the subways. I have a place in the city. I'm in the city. We have offices in the city. Obviously, I'm in the city 1 or 2 days a week, and I spend my weekends in there. And I'm seeing more activity, more mobility. But we have to pick up to where we were. We have to use public transportation, and we have to continue to expand the public transportation, not only on an east-west basis, but on north-south. And I think some of the projects that are out there, certainly with our hub project, we're thinking about ultimately providing connectivity from the hub to Mineola to Hempstead to create more mobility, more public transportation usage. So I think that's really the answer. I don't think we need to be afraid that more people are coming to the island, and that's going to create congestion. And then remember, where people, I think, are starting to move are more of the downtown type of developments where there will be more walkability. So you'll need less use of a car. And then to take it even to the next 3 or 4 levels, we're going to be talking about shared cars more, and in electric vehicles, and more easy mobility from self-driving vehicles and cars and whatnot. So, we were headed towards that pre-pandemic. That was a lot of talk about that. It'll come back. And I don't think congestion and traffic congestion is not solvable, and I don't think it'll be an issue. One thing I just wanted to step back to Harry's discussion and all the good things the IDA does. But one thing I'd like to add is what the IDAs on Long Island do is they allow developers and companies to be more competitive. And that's really important, right? Because there's IDAs and other agencies in other areas in the tri-state area and other states that utilize those benefits to bring people and companies to their municipalities. And the IDA plays an important role in making rents affordable, products affordable by giving these tax incentives for people to be here. So they do a great job. Harry, I applaud you and what your team does.
Thank you. Sophia, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I was being polite and I raised my hand, so I didn't speak over anyone. I just want to go back to something that Kyle had said, and also Michael. I think we're all kind of talking about. Now, again, me focusing on commercial landlords, what we're also seeing is, and again, the concept of teamwork is in these bankruptcies that have been filed later in the pandemic, let's say, Ascena Retail and Tailored Brands, where, at least on my end, we're seeing more of these leases being negotiated and landlords and tenants reaching a lot of lease amendments to sometimes forgive certain portions of rent or, certain claims they may have in the bankruptcy because they want to be able to keep their spaces filled. And like Kyle said, if there's going to be some kind of assistance to let these businesses operate longer, to make it through the winter. I think that goes hand in hand with what commercial landlords are doing instead of, not wanting to reach an agreement and tenants not wanting to operate, or not so much not wanting to, but being in a financial position to operate. We're starting to see things turn around than what we saw right at the beginning of the pandemic, where a lot of bankruptcies had, like Pier 1, they had to liquidate and close down. You don't see Pier 1 stores opened anymore, but that is starting to change as time goes on. So I just wanted to add that point.
Mm-hmm. And I want to circle back also to Tom Pistore, because we were talking about some of these major projects and the way that the IDA helps out with development and looking again at the arena. It's a brand new venue and it's a premium venue and I forgot what I was going to say. But you mentioned the partnership with Northwell Health. You mentioned incorporating health practices. It's something that all these buildings are going to have to incorporate when we bring a lot of people together. And oh, this is what I was going to say about the community benefit agreement, giving back to the community. And you know, what's your community benefit agreement? Who will you hire? You hire locally. How will that work for the arena? That was my question.
Yeah, there's definitely a diversity and inclusion plan. Within the partnership, there is also community infrastructure that's being discussed as to how we build it or activate it. Bringing on partners, like Northwell, and being able to work with them on some key health initiatives that we're going to start to roll out. But I think like Kyle had said, I think the arena represents for the community kind of hope, amidst, I won't be over dramatic and, say, some light amidst the darkness, right? Because, these are really anxious times, economically, mentally, physically for a lot of people, industries, businesses, the economy, and the arena, from my perspective, as we evolve into Q3 and Q4 of 21, the human requirement to congregate, whether it's beaches or amphitheaters or shopping or with family, the arena in a safe, sanitized way, as a community beacon. We're really excited with the results that we've seen so far from season ticket holders, from premium buyers, almost 8,000 season ticket holders, about 80% for the Islanders, around 40% of our premium is already sold. So we can see that people, are excited about the enterprise, the project, the product, and they can see through the kind of, darkness and cloud right now that hope around the corner at some point in 21 is there. And again, all of us to congregate with friends and family is really going to be a roaring human condition from my perspective.
And when will you begin hiring for people to work there?
We're starting that process early in Q1. A lot of planning, trying to put in the right roles from an arena perspective. So that'll start probably to hit the marketplace late Q1, maybe Q2. Again, we're also trying to be nimble with the NHL, start of that schedule. And so a lot of moving pieces, but we certainly hope by mid to late Q2 and 3 that we're ready and roaring to go.
So with that project, as with all projects, as we all know, we need government approval for a lot of these different steps along the way. And I'm wondering if that government approval process for anyone here have you found that it's been more expedited because people are eager to get things done during the pandemic, or has it been more slow? And what does that look like in terms of development?
Yeah,
Go, Michael.
That's why
There you
I
go,
raised my
Michael.
hand.
Yeah, I would say obviously it was slow going into the pandemic. Everything kind of stopped, and it was obviously difficult. But I think halfway to certainly now, things have picked up, and approvals and reviews and those things are getting done. And I would say, somewhat on an expedited basis, with somewhat of a consideration that we're trying to get things up and running. So I think there's certainly not a wall there or anything of that sort to stop us. We have 5 or 6 projects going on in the area. We have about 1,700 construction workers on various jobs, and that team's it's going very well. Obviously, we have significant safety and wellness protocols that need to be put in place. But I would say that things are getting approved, and the process is kind of getting back to somewhat of a, I wouldn't say normal, but at least, rolling forward, as opposed to, early on we had a bit of a stoppage.
And Sky, if I could, I'd just like to add that even pre-pandemic, we have a county executive who is extremely growth-minded. She is very pro-business, and she works very closely with the county's Office of Economic Development and the Deputy Community Executive Evelyn Simmis. And the strength that they have is that they listen, and they have been very engaged with local businesses. And they heard two things. They heard about something called the dreaded 239F process, and they heard about approvals from the fire marshal's office. And to the county executive's credit, she listened and she acted. She provided budget to staff up further in the fire marshal's office, thereby to expedite more of the approvals. But secondly, she convened a blue ribbon panel to address the 239F process, which is simply permitting when you're building adjacent to a county road. That process was running 18 to 24 months, which to me, coming out of the private sector, is not acceptable, because everyone will tell you time is money. And if you think that you can build within the next 6 months in a different state, a different community, or you have to wait 24 to 36 months to build here, you're going to put your money where you can get the quickest and best return. So kudos to the county executive for addressing those, convening the panel, and looking at ways even pre-pandemic to shorten that cycle, but also making sure that the process didn't stop during the pandemic.
Yes, Sky, can I just piggyback on that? I mean, Harry's doing a tremendous job because he is the approval process in some regards. But what the pandemic also did is a lot of our townships and counties were kind of archaic in their systems. You'd have to submit things by paper, in person. What the pandemic has done is, for the most part, municipalities are upgrading their processes. They're digitizing things. You can submit by email. Some towns are going to be implementing portals where contractors or developers can now log in and see where their application is along the process. Things that should have been done 15 years ago are happening now because of the restrictions of the pandemic. And on top of that, you're going to see maybe virtual inspections where someone doesn't have to actually show up, just because we're trying to limit contact between folks. And all that will just expedite and make the process more efficient for people who are trying to do economic development here.
It sounds like there are some positives that have come out of the pandemic, which is just testament to the way that we all adapt as professionals and work with our partners and work with the government. I think it is a hope, that comes out. I want to know now everyone's thoughts on what our communities look like in 10 years from now. What does everything look like? What is shopping, the downtowns, the transit, do we have gas stations? Do we have electric cars? Do we have retail storefronts? So what does that look like?
Well, I'll jump in quick. I think that it comes down to two things. I think it comes down to personal engagement, for one. I think what you're going to find is when the COVID lifts, when the pandemic lifts, and we have the vaccine and all the right protocols, I think you're going to see this surge of people coming together. And where do you come together? You come together in the downtowns. Secondly, it's about the experience. I think that our retailers have to work hard just about providing a great experience, an experience that you can't get through online shopping. But I think it's going to be about coming together. So I'm optimistic. I think it is going to lend more towards walkability, less reliance on cars. And that's why the transit-oriented developments are just key to providing that walkability. Love the live, work, play model. I think that's going to be critical. And I agree with Michael early on. He said that, it's not right for everybody to work remotely. I feel the same way. I think people are going to come back to the workspace. It's not right for everybody to work remotely. It's not, I don't love it myself. I believe in creating the culture and the morale, and I think you're going to see people coming back to being together.
So despite COVID, that's the trend.
Yeah, I obviously agree with that. I think that we're still in the early innings of the technology explosion. And over the next 10 years, technology is going to really take over our lives in ways we probably can't even think about now. But there will be more automation. There will be all this thing about mobility and driverless cars and smart growth in that manner. I think the really good news is we were headed in this direction in a big way before the pandemic. I think once we get out of this, which hopefully will be sometime in 21 or into 22, there's going to be just I think an explosion of activity. What Tom is doing with the Belmont arena is unbelievable in terms of giving Long Island an asset. And I promise that it will be full and people are going to enjoy it sooner rather than later. We're going to create something, really special at the hub that people are going to be able to enjoy. And to Harry's point, it's going to involve a lot of experiential type of retail. There will be housing. We're thinking of virtual care facilities and innovation. The concept is going to be innovation everywhere. So it's going to be really a smart growth, really state of the art mixed use project. So, I'm very bullish on the future, particularly on Long Island. I think what we're going to have vis-a-vis the city, because I don't think we'll always be tied to the city. And I think it'll be more of a hub and spoke type situation where the city will be the hub and the suburbs will be spokes. And there will be greater connectivity, both literally in terms of how we move between the city and the suburbs, but more so how the suburbs collaborate and integrate with the city in terms of economic activity. I think the big companies, and we still see it on the technology side, the technology firms, and they're all our tenants, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Amazon, IBM, Microsoft, we're working with all of them. They are dedicated to the city. They're going to be in the city, but I think what we'll see is an expansion of them, their activities, as I say, like a hub and spoke. So I think we're not going to draw Google out here for their headquarters, but I think we will see those technology companies that exist today and the ones that will come have presence in Long Island. And as we continue to build out our downtowns and create more of an environment where people can live, work, stay, experience new things, both the city and the suburbs will grow. So I'm very bullish, and I think we're going to come out of this thing really roaring, and there's going to be some great things that happen.
Wow, wonderful. Who else has a positive outlook?
And Sky, I want to say that I'm very proud of you and all the things that you've done. I've met you like 5 or 6 years ago, and you were a very young lady. You're still a young lady, but great job. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Mike.
I could speak on the financial.
Who else wants to give me a compliment?
Did a great job. I'll give you a compliment.
Yes, please.
On the financial end, I can speak about 10 years from now, what you see in the
financial planning.
I mean, from a banking perspective, because of the PPP crisis and work at home, and all of my team worked 24 hours a day for 3 months straight working on PPP loans. The technology, we've had projects 2, 3, 4 years down the road. We got them done in like 6 months. So the technology has exploded on the banking side. So 10 years from now, you could probably get a commercial mortgage online, put your information in and get an answer within like a day or two. So it's going to, it's going to catapult. So it's going to be easier. So when they're expanding out here on Long Island or in the city, wherever they want to be, you'll have probably virtual commercial bankers that just, you send your information online, you give it to your banker, and they'll have an answer, fairly quickly. So again, we don't have a crystal ball, but I got to tell you, on the financial side, the technology has just catapulted, and that's what every bank out there as well. I mean, Citi, obviously we're global, so on the global side, it's amazing what we can do now on the technology and what clients could do just through their own home. I mean, they barely have to come to the branch anymore. So
wow.
It's kind of what I have to see on the financial side.
Does that make your job easier, John, or more efficient, or both?
It makes it more efficient, right? Because the better technology we have, the better kind of weapons we have to make an answer and make a clear answer on a credit decision. And it's better for the client as well because it's speed, right? So they want to get in their building right away so they can make money. We don't want to wait, 3, 4 weeks, a month down the road. By the time we get all the information in from them and it goes back and forth. If the technology is there and we have it in front of us, we have great bankers. So, they can make a decision right away. So, and it's collaboration too with our credit teams and as well. It just makes things a lot easier. So again, it's speed for the client. That's the main thing.
Sky, I'll be optimistic, and thank you, Michael. We are trending to be sold out. After the Spanish flu pandemic, the Roaring 20s happened, right? And so, I'm optimistic. I think it's just a better perspective, and not blindly optimistic. But I expect everyone to come roaring back, and I would be remiss if I didn't invite this esteemed group. Love to arrange a personal tour for everybody on site, because it's really a majestic site on the campus, and it'll be great to host everybody.
Cool, thank you.
Yes, I can comment just quickly on the legal side of it. This is not necessarily good or bad, but in the next few years, I think we will start seeing new case law come out, because tenants are going to try to argue that the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders acted as a certain event, rather than using the legal terms, that would basically forgive or allow a tenant not to pay rent for, the several months that they were shut down based on the governmental orders. There are cases that are starting to be filed, but it's too soon to see what the courts are going to hold, whether they're going to follow the exact terms of the lease, or whether new case law will be developed, based on this novel coronavirus that we've never experienced before, and we'll have to see what actually happens. So it'll be interesting to see the case law that does come out.
We have to conclude very shortly now. Kyle, do you want to give some thoughts?
I'll just say this, that I agree. I am optimistic as well, for the reasons stated below, and that people who are listening should take away that, thanks to Tom, we know that the Islander tickets are close to selling out, so you better get them sooner than later. I just made a note of that. But Tom, I'm not a guy who could afford club seats, so just save me 2 on the aisle. That's what I just need, 2 aisle seats.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, Sky, thank you again. This was great, and I really appreciate being with everyone here on this panel. Tremendous job, and look forward to the future.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks to our panel. Thank you to everyone who participated and watched. This is recorded, so we'll have that video up on YouTube, and we'll circulate it on social media so you can share it with anyone who may have missed today's episode of Herald Inside LI. We have a lot coming up. We're going to do a panel on mental health and kids in schools, and the partnership between Northwell and some school districts. We're going to do a panel on 5G. We talked a lot about technology today. We're going to do a panel on 5G technology. And we're going to do a nonprofit panel. So there's a lot coming up. So please do stay tuned, stay into the website, follow us on social media. And thank you again to everyone. Thanks so much, and enjoy your day and weekend.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Sky.
Bye.
Pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.